Hi there, my name is Melina Abramian and I am a career counselor within the Career Services Center at Santa Monica College. Today I'm going to be going through a presentation on how to prepare for a digital interview. Let's begin. So before we get started with the specifics for digital interviewing, I want to make sure that you are prepared for how to interview in general. If you haven't already, please do review the SMC interview guide and watch the How to Prepare for an Interview workshop video, which is also a part of this workshop series here on YouTube. So for today's workshop, we are going to be covering all the basics of digital interviewing, and I'm going to be providing some important tips for you. So first, we're going to go over the types of digital interviews. We're going to go over tips on how to prepare for interview on screen, how to prepare your environment, testing your recording equipment, and tips for success. So what exactly is a digital interview? There are actually two main types of digital interviews, and instead of having your interview in person as a traditional interview is done, you would be having your digital interview essentially virtually. So either you would have a live face-to-face chat with an interviewer, so it might be in the format of, for example, a Zoom conference where you can communicate back and forth, or it would be a pre-recorded interview where the questions are provided to you and you would just record yourself answering these questions. The digital interviewing softwares do vary, so depending on the type of software you would be using for your interview, which will of course be decided by the company, it may look a little bit different, and we'll talk more about how to do research on what exactly your digital interview software will be like. So specifics for live digital interview. So like I said, live digital interviews are essentially the same type of conversation that you would be having in a regular interview where you would be presented with questions by the interviewer. You'd actually be meeting virtually with the hiring manager. They would ask you questions and you would answer them. So you are speaking to a live person. So there will be direct back and forth communication between you and the interviewer. And in live digital interviews, the interviewer can ask you any follow-up questions or clarification questions, which is a little bit different than what we see in pre-recorded videos. So let's get into that. So a pre-recorded digital interview uses a specific type of software. Some really popular ones right now are HireVue and WePow. And essentially, these are pre-selected questions that appear on the screen. So essentially, you would click on the link to get started with a digital interview. And the first screen would be a screen of the question. So you'd see the question pop up. You'll be given about 30 seconds typically to read the question, and then you will next be allowed to answer the question. You'll be given about 3 minutes to answer the question. Now, the timing really depends on the type of software. So some softwares might provide you 2 minutes to answer a question, and it also does depend on what the hiring managers set for the timing of how long you have to answer questions. One thing that's really important to note is that you won't have any communication with the hiring manager during the pre-recorded digital interview. So you will have to make sure that your answers are very thorough and detailed, because in this case, they won't have an opportunity to ask you any follow-up questions. For most softwares, you will be provided a practice round, so it mimics exactly what will happen when you begin the interview, and you'll get to practice recording yourself. We're not exactly sure if the hiring managers have access to these pre-recordings. Most software websites that provide interviewing software say that they don't, but just in case, you definitely want to keep it professional. Okay, so how to prepare. There are 3 things you need to prepare. First, of course, is going to be yourself. Second is going to be your environment, since it's not going to be in a controlled environment. It's going to be yours. And third is going to be your equipment. So we want to make sure all of these 3 things are fully prepped before you get started. So, in preparing yourself, you have to make sure to get mentally prepared. So, like I said at the start of this video, if you haven't had enough guidance on interviewing in the past, or if you need a refresher, definitely do check out our interviewing tips offered on the SMC interview guide and do review the workshop video that I mentioned earlier. I highly suggest watching videos of people who previously completed interviews for tips and also to get yourself a little bit more used to the format since this may be something that's completely new to you. You definitely want to get comfortable seeing yourself on the screen. It may be a little awkward at first, but as you practice, you do want to make sure you're getting more and more comfortable so that whenever it's time for you to start recording your video or have the live video session, you feel more comfortable on screen. Even though it's going to be a virtual interview, you definitely want to bring the energy. So you want to remember that this really is the real deal. And this is your shot at interviewing and convincing the hiring managers that you are a good fit for them. So you want to go ahead and make sure to mentally prepare yourself to be energetic, to be smiling on the camera, and to really be the best version of yourself on screen. So how to get physically prepared. You definitely still want to dress the part. Even if you're not going in person, they'll be seeing you on screen, so you want to dress nicely, professionally. Dressing the part really does depend on the type of position that you're applying for. Some positions will expect that you are wearing a suit, whereas some will not. So you really want to do some research on your specific industry and see what is typical for attire for interviewing. You definitely want to practice positive and appropriate body language while you're recording yourself. So, for example, if you're somebody who uses your hands a lot, you want to make sure to center yourself, maybe bring your hands down, and make sure to avoid that when you're in the actual interview. Also, if you find yourself being somebody who shakes your leg a lot, you want to make sure to be aware of that. And one way to do that is to record yourself and watch your recordings to see what things that you might want to fix. Okay, so prepping your environment. You definitely want to select a space in advance where you're going to have your interview and start to prep that environment. So for example, if you're going to be doing it in a bedroom, you want to make sure that maybe you move a little bit of furniture around so that you don't have a lot going on in the background. And you definitely want to make sure that you don't have any clutter and that everything is tidy. So everything in this recording is essentially a representation of you, and we want to show that you're organized and you're in a tidy environment. You also want to make sure that you don't have any noise distractions. So if you are sharing your space with anybody, or if you're going to be in a room where there are multiple people, you want to remind them politely to be quiet during your interview. So let them know in advance that you're going to be having an interview. Same goes with our furry friends, any pets that you may have. You want to make sure that you have a space for them where they're far away enough where if they make any noise, it won't be recorded in your interview. So if that means that you might have to have a friend take care of your pet, you definitely want to arrange that in advance. And you also want to have a well-lit environment. So you want to make sure that the interviewer can see your face clearly in a Zoom call or a conference call if it's a live session, but also in the pre-recorded, you want to make sure that you don't have light behind you because that can make your face appear darker, but rather you want to have light in front of you, in front of the camera. So prepping your equipment. So this is a really critical part of prepping for a digital interview. First, you want to decide what kind of device you're going to use. So whether you're going to use your cell phone, whether you're going to use a laptop camera or a webcam, you want to make sure that it's good quality, that they can see you and you don't look like little pixels. And you want to make sure that your face fits fully in the screen. If you are going to be using your phone to record, do make sure to set your phone on Do Not Disturb, because if you get a call, it may interrupt your recording. And unfortunately, in a pre-recorded interview, you cannot restart the interview once you've already begun. The next thing you want to do is make sure that your audio works well. So this is going to be really important in recording yourself in advance and listening and making sure that your voice comes out clearly. Ideally, if you have any earbuds, you can go ahead and use those so that your voice is captured well. And if you don't, it's okay. Just try to make sure that you're close enough to the microphone that your voice can be clearly heard. Wi-Fi is going to be very important when it comes to your live sessions, especially because they may use more bandwidth than regular phone calls or anything like that, or just surfing the internet. So you definitely want to make sure that you have strong Wi-Fi connection so that you don't sound like a robot while you're speaking, and also to avoid getting cut off or disconnected during your digital interview. So some additional important tips. You definitely want to research the software or platform you'll be using for your interview. So typically you'll be given a heads up on the type of software you'll be using when you receive the invitation to the interview via email, or you might learn about it over the phone. You can definitely ask what type of software you'll be using. And most software companies, digital interviewing software companies, do have frequently asked questions and set up guides on their website. So do definitely look for that. You want to remember that in pre-recorded interviews, the hiring manager will not be able to ask any follow-up questions, so you definitely want to answer thoroughly. And I really can't say this enough, practice, practice, practice. So try recording yourself, reviewing your recordings, and see what things you can tweak and improve. And of course, you want to make sure that your equipment and Wi-Fi are working well. Some additional tips I want to address. Again, remember to dress professionally, and you want to avoid wearing any really bright colored clothing. So if you could avoid wearing white, bright colored clothes actually do wash out your face when you're on the screen. So you can wear some color, but make sure that it's not too bright. If you need notes during your interview to remind you of things that maybe you want to mention, some important things that you don't want to miss saying, you can actually add some sticky notes next to your camera. Make sure they don't show on the camera, of course, but you can add them there, and that will also help you make sure you keep eye level with the camera instead of looking constantly at the screen. So by looking at the camera, like I've been doing throughout this video, you give the impression kind of like you're making eye contact with the interviewer or whoever's going to be watching your pre-recorded answers. You definitely don't want to skip out on a practice round if you are offered one with the software that you'll be using. So this is a really great way for you to get experience using the software and learn how it works and see really how quickly your time will go by. If you do need to use a timer, you can do so, but make sure you don't use anything that dings or makes a loud sound. So if you have something, for example, maybe you can set on your phone that vibrates, you can use that as well. And since you only have one opportunity at both live, virtual face-to-face digital interviews and pre-recorded, you definitely want to make sure to wait until you're completely ready to start because you only have one chance. Lastly, I have gone ahead and created a digital interviewing prep to-do list for you all that you can use to make sure that you follow all the steps that I've included, and plus I've added some additional details that you want to make sure that you fully prep before your interview. So you can go ahead and take a look at this. It will be linked in the description box below. I hope you found this workshop helpful, and if you do have any questions, you can definitely contact the Career Services Center at Santa Monica. Our phone number is listed here. It is 310-434-4337. And current Santa Monica students are able to schedule counseling appointments, but if you do have any questions, feel free to give us a call or email us, and definitely follow us on Instagram at SMC Career Center.